Today I want to handle this situation where a column name has a certain substring that you can always find in that column header, but maybe there's a part of it that changes. In this instance, maybe you have evaluation year space task, or it could be space property, or it could be evaluation year with nothing at the end. This is different from the case where you only have two options, where you could use table.RenameColumns and then use a missing field optional argument to handle that case. I'm going to load the table into Power Query. And then I want to first extract all of the column headers. To make it more visual, I want to add this as a step, so it isn't necessary. I want to use table.columnNames to grab all of my columns, and this is in a list format. Then I want to filter this list to only contain those rows that contain my substring. I can do this using the list.select function, which will iterate over my list, where I then have to apply a function to say what item do I want to keep, meaning I have access to each keyword. I can say I want to keep those rows where the text contains function evaluates to true. I want to evaluate the current item in my list, and the text I'm searching for is then evaluation year. And I'm going to assume that there's only ever one hit, meaning if you had a table with multiple columns that have, for instance, the word year, you'd need to be more specific when you do the search. This will then filter my list to ideally only have one row, where I can then extract the one row using the curly bracket syntax to say I want to extract the first row because the lists are index 0 based. This is then text, which we can use in the next step, where I want to select only certain columns. Going back to the initial step, I want to keep the first three columns and then this column and remove anything else. This isn't necessary in the example, but I want to keep it to be thorough because I want to show that you can also use the output of this step inside of the select column function. This function takes a list where I'm then going to hardcode these first column headers and then add the previous step as the last item. I should have renamed my step before referencing it, but this will update once I change the name, and then I need my curly bracket at the end. I renamed my step and then everything was dandy. Lastly, I want to rename my column because that's kind of the point of this. I want to use the RenameColumns function, and it might be easier to get Power Query to write the code for me, but I don't want to hard code this evaluation year task. I want this to be related to my step, which is then called extract one column. So that's actually everything I need to do. Then I want to close and load. I can now show that if I change the column header to be something else, as long as it contains that evaluation year text, everything will work, except I apparently still have a hard-coded value. But let's go in and fix that. And that's because Power Query likes adding this change type step whenever you load a table, and I actually don't want that. I only want to evaluate types after I've already renamed my columns, so we can add that now. Then I can click detect data type to have Power Query do it for me, and now we can close and load. Again, as long as my column simply contains the substring evaluation year, it won't matter what I add at the end, because we're specifically looking for that text. But if I were to remove that, it should error, because I can't find it. You might want to take into account that maybe you have to account for the column being missing, but you should have that column. Actually, I want to keep the error, because if I'm missing a column that I need, then I want to know that I'm missing it. I don't want that to be a surprise. So last example, everything works. So